What is up, RPG Final Fantasy fans? In this video, I'll be ranking all the dungeons in Final Fantasy IV. Unfortunately, when I made the tier list, for some reason, even though I put all the files in the correct order, it just decided not to do so. So that is literally pissing me off. But other than that fact, let's get right into this video. And I will just, I guess, use this random. No, I probably won't. I will just go from worst to best. I won't use this awful. I will go from worst to best. So, what do I think the worst dungeon in Final Fantasy IV is? Want to take a wild guess? Yeah, it's the Sylph Cave. One of the worst dungeons in the Final Fantasy series. It's just dumb. The layout is awful. The aesthetic is kind of bad. The reward is honestly really mid. You have to cast float every single time you change your floor, and that is aggravating. Like, honestly, aggravating to have to get through. So that's just annoying. And yeah, this whole time you're just like, can I be anywhere else? Like, it's just so bad. It's just this green, blobby, boogery mess of just agony. It's so awful. One of the worst Final Fantasy dungeons, if not the worst Final Fantasy dungeon ever made. Like, it's not even one of those ones that's just like, oh, it's like 2 rooms and then it's just kind of dumb. No, it's just straight up trash. And then here we go. We've got another straight up trash dungeon, and that is going to be the underground waterway. Okay, actually, it's not that bad. I'll put it in the D tier, honestly. Actually, you know what? Nope, let's save that. Let's go with the Lunar Tunnels. I'm going to put that in the E tier. Most people wouldn't count this as a dungeon, but you know what? I wanted another dungeon on this tier list, so I threw it in. It's just some caves that you go through on the freaking moon, and yeah, you don't. Just a couple chests, and yeah, it's not on the world map, and it's not a town, so I counted it as a dungeon. And basically, the reason I put it on here is to show how bad the Sylph Cave is, because it's that bad that it's literally worse than a nothingness of the Lunar Tunnels. And next, we've got the underground waterway, which it's nice that we get Tella in here, and it's honestly not that awful. It's just too long and just not interesting enough to say that it's a genuinely good dungeon. So yeah, I'm gonna have to put it in D. Every time I play this game, I just dread this part where you have to go through like a billion floors with Cecil, Rydia, and Tella, and half the time you're out of MP because you don't get ethers easily in Final Fantasy IV, so it's just annoying. And yeah, half the time your mages are just either hitting for like 6 damage, or they're losing stats because Tella loses stats when he levels up because he's a freaking old man. Or we get that lame shiz where you have to use your dang rod to cast 10 damage magic arrows. It's just so annoying. Way too long, way too stupid, way too convoluted. Okay, next we've got the Eblan Cave, which is the definition, a cave of Eblan, I guess. Eblan Cave, whatever you want to call it. It's going in the C tier. It is the definition of mediocrity. Other than the fact we get Edge here, which is nice. Well, I think you get Edge here. Maybe I'm going crazy, but you get to visit Edge's village here and fight Rubicante for the first time. Yeah, it's not that special. It's not trash, but in terms of the Final Fantasy IV dungeons, it's definitely one of the weakest, and it's just not that memorable. For literally being one of your main character's place of residence, it should have been a lot more interesting, in my opinion at least. And yeah, I just don't really think it's a great dungeon, and it's just not interesting, and it's pretty annoying to fill out the map 100% too, because you got this like so many random garbage things. I mean, at least in the PSP version and GBA and normal, like the OG, you don't have to do that map crap. But you know, in the end, the Cave of Eblan is the definition of mediocrity, and it's not very interesting. All right, let's move into the passage of the Eidolons, which, you know what? I'm going to switch around some things. I'm going to put that in C because at least it has some merit to it. Nah, we'll keep it in D. But the passage of the Eidolons is probably worse. It's like the Sylph Cave, but not as annoying because the layout isn't as trash. But you still have to keep applying float. still have to keep doing all this random rubbish. It is definitely more aesthetically interesting and less like the enemy encounters aren't too annoying. Like the Sylph Cave has like so many awful enemies like Marlboros and stupid frog ladies. So yeah, in the end, the Paths of Eidolon's pretty bad. I don't know why in my notes I put it above the Cave of Eblan, but at least the Cave of Eblan's just mid. Whereas this is just straight up annoying. Yeah, and the underground waterway, it's just too long, and I feel like if the underground waterway, if you had a more interesting party and it was like 10% shorter, then yeah, it would definitely probably be like a B tier. It's just too much. Anyway, let's move into not the Mist Cave. Yeah, the Mist Cave. Mist Cave again is a C tier dungeon. It's nothing too special. It's the first dungeon in the game, so I mean that's to be expected. But you just like walk through like 10 seconds of dungeon, and then all of a sudden, oh, you fight a boss, and it's actually a pretty interesting first boss, if to be absolutely frank. But in the end, it's just not that great of a dungeon. It's just like literally you can beat it in like 15 minutes. And that is if it's your first time playing. If you've played the game before, you'll probably beat it in like 10 seconds. Like, honestly, it's literally brain dead, easy, and uninteresting. Therefore, the Mist Cave is going in the C tier. Next in the freaking heck, the Ancient Waterway. And this is pretty much the underground waterway, but shorter, and you actually have a good party. This is what I was trying to say earlier. The underground waterway, if it were refined much better, it would definitely be better than the ancient waterway. The ancient waterway, it's another waterway with a better party, and it's not as long. Is the layout as interesting, and is the aesthetic as interesting? No, and there's no boss. However, it just isn't annoying. It just goes by pretty quick. And at this point, you have a really good party, like one of the most fun parties in the game, with Cecil, Young, Pollum, Porum, and Tella. So like you've got this like goated party. Yeah, it's not bad, but it's not the best either. So the B tier. And next we've got the Antlion's Den, which is cool. You get to save Rosa by going through this freaking place with Cecil, Edward, and Rydia. And honestly, it's not bad. I mean, is it great? No, but it is pretty good. So I'm going to put it in the B tier. I think it's decent. I think it could be a lot better, but it also could be a whole heck of a lot worse. So we're going to put it in the B tier. All right, next we have got the good old Mount Hobs, which is another B tier. If you can't tell by now, I don't think FF4 has the best dungeons of any FF game. There's lots of B tier ones, but you know what? That's okay. Mount Hobs, I think the reason this is even as high as it is, the Mom Bomb fight is very memorable, but honestly, it's all about that epic cutscene where Yong is introduced. And just because you have a genuinely fun party at this point, like you go through Mount Hobs and you've got Cecil, Rydia, Rosa, Edward, and Yong. Again, that's a pretty goated party by the end of it. And yeah, it's just a fun dungeon. It's not that amazing, but it's certainly not that bad either. All right, next we have got the Lair of the Father, which is going to be our first A tier dungeon. It's where you fight Bahamut, and it's got some of that good old junk where you get to fight a bunch of crazy behemoths over and over again. Some hard difficulty enemies, and then you get to fight Bahamut at the end, who frankly is probably the easiest thing in the whole dungeon if you play your cards right. So in the end, Lair of the Father, it's pretty difficult, it's memorable, it's challenging, and you can approach it in two ways, either with Fasoya in the party or Kane in the party, which always makes it a dungeon that's a little more replayable than most, because maybe if you played it with Fasoya last time, you're like, ooh, I want to try it with Kane this time, or vice versa. So you know what? I thought Lair of the Father was a pretty decent dungeon, and you know what? It's good. All right, next we have got the Cave of Trials, which is a PSP and GBA exclusive dungeon. And basically the idea of this dungeon is, so in those versions, if you haven't played those versions, you can, since you know how all the characters fake die, all the characters, so basically every playable character except for Tella and Fasoya, you can put back in your party. As if you go to Mysidia, then you can switch out your party, and it's actually pretty cool. The Cave of Trials is basically the Lunar Subterrane for those characters. Like in the Lunar Subterrane, you get all the ultimate weapons for the main 5. Well, Cave of Trials will give you the ultimate weapons for the twins, Sid, Edward, and Yong. So it's a fun little place, but it's just a couple of it's just treasure chest basically, and you have to run it you have to run it multiple times because dang Cecil can't leave your party, and that's just super annoying. So yeah, that's annoying. I think that's right? Twins, Sid, Edward. Maybe you don't have to. I think you only have to run it once. Yeah, you only have to run it. Unless I'm going crazy. Might be going crazy. Anyway, it's fine, but if you make a mistake, you don't bring along some people you have to go through multiple times. And, it's just some fights and some chests. But you know what? It is really cool to have a place just dedicated ultimate weapons. And I think it's a pretty fun dungeon. I totally get it if people would rate it lower, especially if you haven't even played those versions. But you know what? If you haven't played the PSP version of this game, you should check it out. It's kind of gas. I don't like it as much as the DS/mobile version for the game, but it's like a 0.01% difference. They do different things better, and yeah, so I would highly recommend that version. All right, next we have Lodestone Cavern, which a lot of people hate this place, but I really like it. It's one of the only like early Final Fantasy dungeons that's like a crazy gimmick. And the gimmick here is you can't equip metallic equipment. You've got to like equip your party. You got to change up your whole game plan so that you can get through this dungeon. You know what? I found that very interesting. So I liked that we get this dungeon where you basically just have a good old time just trying to get through it without any metallic equipment. And it's actually pretty crazy. A lot harder than you'd expect. And it just makes the whole dungeon a very interesting and unique experience. That boss fight at the end is amazing, super memorable, all that jazz. Also, I accidentally skipped one of my rankings, and that's the Sealed Cave. That is going to be in the B tier. It's decent. I like some of the cutscenes, but and the Demon Wall is a very standout fight in the game. Really cool boss fight. But in the end, the Sealed Cave is just not that interesting, and it's definitely the best dungeon of the Underworld caves, but it's still not that great. And really, in terms of this dungeon, it's mostly just good for the plot and the Demon Wall boss fight. The rest of it is pretty unmemorable. All right, now let's get back into the ranking where I should be, and that is the Tower of Zot. And the Tower of Zot is awesome. I'm going to give it S tier. The Tower of Zot is an epic climb to go save Rosa from the baddie Gulbez. Okay, don't interpret baddie wrong. Actually, no, interpret it wrong because he's hot as frick. But I hate pretending. Okay, never mind. Anyway, what I mean to say here is this is a great dungeon with some great challenge to it. Some of the enemies here will wipe your butt. That's not wipe the floor. I don't know what I'm saying. Wipe the floor. What is that? And forget it. They will cream your face if you don't prep correctly for these dungeons. So like you gotta fight these crazy ice beasts, these crazy fire beasts, and they will literally own your party if you're not doing things. This is actually a pretty challenging dungeon, which makes it all the more memorable. It has awesome music. It's got a great design. It's just two awesome boss fights in the form of the Magus Sisters and the freaking what's-her-face Barbaricia. Yeah, this is just absolutely gas. Great place. A dungeon. I don't know, place? That doesn't sound right. Okay, anyway, let's move on to the good old... Bruh, this ranking sucks. Wait, my notes are from like a month ago, and apparently a couple of my opinions have changed in such a brief period of time. Yeah, next in the S tier, we have got the Mount Ordeals, which is super cool from a plot perspective. But from a gameplay perspective, it isn't quite as good. But we've got a good double phase boss fight here and a very memorable Final Fantasy moment in terms of Cecil doing the good old goody two shoes paladin transformation, where he goes from having darkness in his soul to being this epic dude with a light sword. And you know what? That's absolutely hype. But unfortunately, in terms of actual gameplay, this dungeon is literally as basic as it gets. So yeah, but it's also super cool, and you just don't forget. Like, this is like the moment of Final Fantasy IV in terms of story. Like, this is one of those moments that you can't forget. Definitely a peak moment of the Final Fantasy series. But unfortunately, that moment alone doesn't carry this dungeon all the way up to, say, S+. All right, next we have got the... let's see. What do I want to do here? My notes are very different from what is speaking to my soul right now, but should I trust my notes, my trusty notes that I took time to make, or should I trust my soul? You know what? I think I'm going to trust my soul. And next, we're going to do the... Oh, frick. What even is my soul telling me right now? Okay, I think we're going to go with the Lunar Ruins next. The only reason I'm throwing this lower, it has so many great boss fights, amazing bonus dungeon with epic rooms and all this stuff, and a great final boss, and it's like its own like little mini game. But the reason I'm going to throw it in the S tier is because to access all the content, you have to beat the game twice. And it's just annoying. Because you can't just save before the final boss and change your characters. No, you have to go through the whole Lunar Subterrane again, because you can only change your characters on Mysidia. It's just really annoying to trek back through there. And then you have to beat the Lunar Ruins. You have to actually go through the Lunar Ruins multiple times, because you can't access their rooms unless you have them in your party. So in the end, the only reason Lunar Ruins probably isn't my favorite dungeon in the game is because of how the party changing mechanics were formed in this game. And honestly, yeah, that mechanic sucks, because if you could just change your party members from the menu, it would be so much nicer, and it would make some of those party members more viable, because like, why would you take along Sid unless you're like fighting like enemies that are weak to his hammers? Oh, we're fighting a machine enemy in this. We're fighting a boss that's weak to lightning. Let's bring in Sid. Nope, we have to go all the way back to Mysidia if we want to do that. You know what I'm saying? The party changing mechanics in the PSP and GBA versions is abysmal. But if they fix that, then the Lunar Ruins would probably make the top of this list. So, you know what? Just a big pet peeve of mine for that one. Because anytime I am big on you shouldn't have to replay anything in an RPG. I mean, backtracking is different, but like, I don't like, if you think about like Tales of Symphonia, you have to beat that game 7 times to do all the content. That's BS. The Lunar Ruins is already too much. Like, you don't need to go through the final dungeon twice, the Lunar Ruins 2 or 3 times just to get everything. That's obnoxious. Stupid. Anyway, regardless though, this dungeon has the best, like, some of the best boss fights in the game. So many cool floors, so much cool jazz, but it is brought down by bad game design choices. All right, next in the S tier or the S plus tier. How do I want to run this? What am I thinking? I literally can't trust my notes, but I also want to trust my notes. Therefore, I'm having a midlife crisis at the ripe age of 17 years old in a Final Fantasy IV ranking video. So we're having a hard time here. I need the wise. You know, if I just grow a Fasoya beard and I just get smart, maybe I'll be able to do this. So just give me a second, or like 100 years, so I can just, you know, grow this Fasoya beard to imbue the intelligence of the Lunarians upon me. Okay, I've come to my decision. Didn't take 100 years. At the top S tier is gonna have to be, drumroll please. I made you wait this long, you might as well wait a little longer. The top S tier is gonna be the Giant of Babil. Just kidding, it's gonna be the Tower of Babil. Just kidding. It's the Lunar Subterrane. Okay, I'm quitting playing games with y'all. It's the Lunar Subterrane. It's a great dungeon with great bosses and stuff, but it does drag a little too much. And again, if you're playing the PSP and what's it called? PSP and GBA versions, you do have to beat it twice if you want to do all the content, which does annoy me. I'm gonna move the Tower of Zalt down to A tier. Okay, anyway, unrelated. I think that it's just really long, and it's fine if you're playing the DS version, but there the dungeon's a lot harder, so it's even longer. So in the end, this is just a little overly long, and the floors end up becoming a little uninspired by the end. But there's just a lot of great bosses here, great treasure, great challenge, and it's, you know what, it's a very fitting final dungeon for the game. But next we've got the Babil duology, and I'm going to have to put the Giant of Babil in second place on this list in the S plus tier. I think just going inside of a giant as a dungeon is fantastic. It's super cool, and you get to use Fasoya for about the only like 10 minutes you get him here, which is fun, and you fight 2 awesome boss fights, and you know, just being inside of that freaking giant, just it just changes the whole perspective I have on this place, because it's just so cool the whole time. You're like this dude is like attacking, like he's walking around, and you're inside him trying to blow him up, but then you have to rebattle all the 4 fiends and perhaps the coolest boss in the game. And yeah, this is just absolute fire. Like, this dungeon, peak Final Fantasy dungeon. I don't have anything wrong with it. Part of me wanted, my note said the Lunar Subterrane and Lunar Ruins went above it, but when I ask my soul, which is less flawed, Giant of Babil is just a perfect Final Fantasy dungeon. And on the top has to be the Tower of Babil, the tower that connects the underworld with the main world. And it just, you visit it many times, but it's never a retread. It's always different parts of the tower. And you've got awesome boss fights here, awesome story moments. Just everything about the Tower of Babil is super memorable, super cool. And yeah, it's definitely the best dungeon in Final Fantasy IV. I've got no problems with it. I wanted to put the Giant of Babil higher, but in the end, I think that the Tower of Babil's got it beat just a little bit, because it just is more substantial, and it takes more than like 30 minutes to beat, and it just is a very good dungeon, and one of the definitely crowning moments of Final Fantasy. Thank you all for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, let me know down below what your favorite Final Fantasy IV dungeons are. If you agree with this list, let me know. If you think it's BS, then let me know. Just be respectful about it. You know, we can respectfully disagree here. Thank you all for watching this video. I'll be continuing to drop these dungeon rankings for the Final Fantasy series. And you know what? If you like this video, like, subscribe, share with your friends if you haven't already. And yeah, let's get this video out to all those 40-year-old men who cry every time they hear the word Final Fantasy IV, aka my dad. Send this video to my dad if you know him. Anyway, let's get into the next video. I want to go record the Final Fantasy VI dungeon ranking now, because I already recorded 5 because my freaking brain can't go in the right order. But you know what? Let's just finish this video. Thank you all for watching. Peace out, RPG fans. Thanks to my good man Chemo for being a patron. If you want tons of exclusive RPG content, join now as a patron today.